Merry Christmas. I am Felix Malpica, the Bishop of the La Crosse Area Synod, and it is my pleasure to join you for worship today, offer you a word of good news. And before I do that, I just need to say a word of gratitude. Thank you. Thank you so much for the work that you do all across this synod, because in and through your work, people are able to see, feel, taste, experience God's promise of peace, love, hope, and justice in this world. Thank you for the way that you support our ministries, our congregations. Thank you for the way that you support the synod. And thank you that because of you and your generosity, we are also able to do work as church, as the whole ELCA, all 65 synods at Churchwide Office in Chicago, that is able to do God's work all around the country and even all around the world. That it is because of you that advocacy is happening on state and national levels, fighting for justice. It is because of you that there is ministry happening all around the world through in and through our global partners. It is because of you that we have a church that is able to give people a glimpse of God's kingdom right here and right now. And it is also because of you that it happens in your neighborhoods. So thank you. Thank you so much for all of your love and support. And personally, thank you for the way that you have invited me to be a part of your communities. I've been starting to make the visits. If I haven't visited you yet, I'm going to get there. I want to get there. I want to get to know you and hear your stories. But you have embraced me. I know you've been praying for me. Thank you. I have felt it. What a beautiful embrace that you have offered to me and my family as we begin ministry here in this place. Thank you is a very important word to say. Now, before I begin the reading and my sermon, let's take a moment to acknowledge the presence of God that is with us and around us at all times. The breath of God, the Holy Spirit, that whenever you need to feel close to God, all you have to do is take a deep breath and remember that that breath is not just your breath, but it is God's breath that connects you with that whole church, right? All across the synod, all around the world, and that connects you with all of creation. In this breath, we are brought together as God's creation, as God's people, and then inspired, right? Which means breathed into, inspired to do God's work in the world. So let's take a moment and take 3 deep breaths. Take a breath in and let it out. Take a second breath in and let it out. And a third breath. In and out. Our gospel today comes to us from Luke, the 2nd chapter. Every year, during Jesus' childhood, his parents traveled to Jerusalem for the Passover celebration. When Jesus was 12, he made the journey with them. They spent several days there participating in the whole celebration. When his parents left for home, Jesus stayed in Jerusalem, but Joseph and Mary were not aware. They assumed Jesus was elsewhere in the caravan that was traveling together after they had already traveled a full day's journey toward home. They began searching for him among friends and relatives. When no one had seen the boy, Mary and Joseph rushed all the way back to Jerusalem and searched for him. After 3 days of separation, they finally found him, sitting among a group of religious teachers in the temple, asking questions, listening to their answers. Everyone was surprised and impressed that a 12-year-old boy could have such deep understanding and could answer questions with such wisdom. His parents, of course, had a different reaction. Son, why have you treated us in this way? Listen, your father and I have been sick with worry for the past 3 days, wondering where you were, looking everywhere for you." And Jesus said, "Why did you need to look for me? Didn't you know that I must be working for my Father?" Well, neither Mary nor Joseph really understood what he meant by this. Jesus went back to Nazareth with them, though, and was obedient to them. His mother continued to store these memories like treasures in her heart, and Jesus kept on growing in wisdom, in physical stature, in favor with God, and in favor with others. Have we been caught up in a caravan? Have we been caught up in the shuffle and put blinders on and forgotten about where Jesus is? And then all of a sudden come to and said, "Wait a minute, where's Jesus?" And then found ourselves frantically looking, asking, "Jesus, where are you? Why are you treating us this way?" And well, in my experience, there's different types of caravans. Well, there's certainly the positive caravans that things are going well, you're having fun, you don't have too many cares because, well, it feels like you have everything under control, and so things are cruising, you're going along great, you've got friends, you've got relatives, things are going fine, and then all of a sudden you come to. Something forces you to come to attention, to open up your eyes and look around, and then you realize, wait a minute, we've left Jesus behind. Where is Jesus? And sometimes you even ask yourself, where have you been? What are you doing? And then there are those negative caravans, those times in life when things are just difficult, things are hard. And you get sucked down and you get those blinders on and you just can't help but look around and not find Jesus and say, "Jesus, where are you in the midst of all of this?" I gotta admit, I've been in both of those types of caravans, and even recently, even in the midst of the pandemic, which has certainly been one of those negative caravans. I have also found myself in times and places where you just kind of get lost in the shuffle of the good, of the joy, and then all of a sudden you've got to remind yourself, hey, wait a minute, where's Jesus in all of this? I wonder too about the church as a whole. The ELCA, we know, has been struggling for a little bit of time now, and perhaps were we caught up in the caravan, thinking that things would just stay good, stay nice. And did we lose Jesus along the way? Was Jesus lost somewhere else? And then now, all of a sudden, we're waking up. We're waking up and asking, wait a minute, Jesus, where are you? Why have you done this to us? And I can't help but hear Jesus's comment. We're responding to all of that, to us and to us as church as a whole, saying, but why? Why do you need to look? Don't you know that I must be doing God's work? Don't you know that I must be working for my Father? And so I think about, okay, Jesus is doing the Father's work. Where does that happen? Does that happen inside that church? Does it happen outside of the church? In the midst of having those blinders off, have I missed an opportunity to see Jesus, to encounter Jesus along the pathways of life? And well, the answer, of course, is yes, that we have opportunities to see Jesus at work all the time. And we just need to have eyes to see and ears to hear that God is present, that God is at work, that God has shown up in this world. So a couple of examples, because I've been searching recently and thinking about where can I find Jesus? Inside the church, outside the church, in the world, in the community, where can I find Jesus at work? So I've got a couple stories to share. One, in this synod, I had an opportunity a little while ago to go down to Sugar Creek Bible Camp and spend some time with some seasonal workers who were being housed at the camp. And I got to tell you, God showed up there. I encountered Jesus Christ in that space. And the people there did too. The owner of the business did too, because they were trying to find somewhere to house these workers. Then they were having difficulty finding the right space. They were calling around, and finally they called Sugar Creek, and Jesse had a conversation and said, well, let's work it out. Let's find a way to make it happen. And the comment back was like, what, really? I never would have expected that it would have been the church to accept this. And yet, that's exactly what church needs to be. It needs to become a safe place for all people. And that's exactly the experience that they felt and that I was able to hear. So I went down and we had a nice meal set for them. And as they showed up, there was this feeling of like, oh, wow. They care about us. They see us. They want to offer us something. And then, for me to sit down and eat with them and listen to their stories, I heard tales of the difficulty of what they endure, of needing to travel from place to place as the seasons come and go, and that normally when they show up, the work is difficult, the work is hard, and they stay basically wherever they're put up, and that's not always very hospitable. That they work from sun up and oftentimes late into the night only to get just a little bit of rest and then rinse and repeat as long as that season goes, because they need the work and they need the money, as little as it is, but they need to keep on going so that they can survive to the next season. But here, I'm happy to say they found an oasis. They found a job, a place that treated them well, where they worked 9 to 5, 8 to 6. They had nights off, they had weekends off. And at first they admitted, they showed up at Sugar Creek and looked around and said, what are we doing here? But with having that extra time off, having that space where they felt safe and comfortable and had a place to cook, they found a community, they found an ability to breathe, they found an oasis, they found a sanctuary. There in that space, they said, oh, this has been good for us. We have finally had an opportunity to breathe a little, to relax, to take walks, to take in the peace and tranquility of this space. And they showed me pictures of the little waterfall and the bluffs, and and how much they enjoyed feeling this space that offered them hospitality, where they were able to get a taste, a glimpse of what God is up to in the world. And there I saw Jesus at work. Now, Jesus doesn't always just show up in and through the church. I a little while back around Thanksgiving had an opportunity to do this whiskey and chocolate tasting with my siblings. We all took an evening out, left the kids with my folks, the grandparents, and we took time away. And I honestly wasn't thinking too much about this night. It was just a simple night to take off. But we went and we tasted and we ate, and we were sitting at tables with strangers. But in the middle of it, the owner came forward and shared the story of what they're up to with their chocolate. They decided that they didn't just want to make chocolate, but that they wanted to do so ethically, that they wanted to do so in a way that didn't just serve them, but that served those who were working out in the fields. So they made a commitment that they would pay not just face value for those cocoa beans, but they would pay over and above to make sure that those who were working out in the fields got a decent wage and could bring themselves to a better life through their support, and that they would travel to those different places from where they were getting their cocoa and meet those people, make relationships with those people, and treat them well. And as I was listening to their story of their travels, of where things were coming from, meeting with the workers, how they were doing this with such integrity, I couldn't help but think, wow, this is Jesus at work. This is Jesus at work, even even through chocolate and whiskey. But this was Jesus at work, all of us in this room supporting this good work where people could focus not just on themselves, but could also focus on the neighbor. And then, let alone, as I started to think this and the conversation opened up at the table, turns out I was sitting next to a guy who was in a monastery for 6 years, and the person in the corner had relatives who were nuns and who all were also serving throughout the church. And the conversation opened up in that space in a way that I didn't expect. But then I saw Jesus, right? I saw Jesus doing the work. And so it happens in the church and it happens outside of the church. And I think we need to start opening up our eyes this year to see where God is already at work. Because sometimes we get caught up in these caravans, these good caravans or negative caravans, and we get the blinders on and we forget about where Jesus is. And then we need to step back. We need to search, we need to look, and we need to look for those places where, well, Jesus is at work, doing the work of his Father. And you and I participate in that work. We can help people find Jesus through what we do in the world too, and that is what the church has been up to. So in this new year, I want to give you a challenge. I want to give you a challenge to do two things. To have your eyes open, looking for Jesus. Where are you finding Jesus? And then tell that story. Embrace that story, lift up that story, nourish that story, and those people who are doing the work of God in the world where you are finding Jesus. And as you do that, also think about yourself. How might you be a potential place where someone else might find Jesus? How can you use your own gifts, your own abilities, not just for yourself, but for the sake of those who are in most need? In this coming year, church, let us wake up and not just try to find God along the caravan of continuing to do 1 hour on Sunday, which you might find God at, yes, because I love worship, but in our whole lives. How do we endeavor as church to make opportunities for people to feel, to see, to taste God's work at hand, where they might be able to say, here's Jesus, because of the work that you are doing, serving God, serving your neighbor. Let us show up this year. Let us tell the story this year of Jesus who does show up, has shown up, and will continue showing up all around this synod, all around this church, all around the world, through others, through community, through the church, through you, and maybe even through me. Let us give thanks for the ways that God has given us so many gifts, and for the ways that God shows up in unexpected places to share these moments of love, of hope, of peace, and justice for the sake of the world, because the world needs it. Amen.